Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Cade Bonsall. I'm joined by my friend Andrew Duvall, and this is going to be our review for Get Out from 2017. So, Andrew, I will be honest with you. When I first heard about this movie, I thought it sounded really, really interesting, but I wasn't too interested at first when I saw the trailers because the trailers just didn't seem as gripping as the movie itself was. So I wasn't sure about seeing it, but I'm glad that I changed my mind and did see it because this might actually be one of my favorite horror films of all time. And I know I said that in our review for The Conjuring, but yeah, I think this might be one of my other favorite horror films. And I think one of the main reasons why this movie is so great would have to be because of Jordan Peele.
And I agree. I don't know if I wouldn't put this one in my top 10 favorites, but one thing I definitely appreciate it because this is a very much a thinking man's horror movie, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
This is the kind of movie where you watch it and you get the big twist towards the end, but then when you watch it again, start to see all the little details in the background. That's when it really starts to add up. The best comparison I can make is I know it's not a horror movie, but Blade Runner. Blade Runner is very much a thinking man sci-fi movie. This is a thinking man's horror movie.
Right.
And Jordan Peele did a great job at writing that and making it into a thinking man's horror movie. Because this very could have easily been just another, kidnapping or dare I say, borderline slasher movie. Or like a home invasion movie like The Strangers. Not that The Strangers is bad, don't get me wrong. But
Well, and I think that with this movie, Jordan Peele proves that not only is he a horror genius, but he's also a very visionary filmmaker. Because remember, this was his first movie as a director, and what a debut it was. It was such a great movie. And I think that of all the stuff that he's written, I think this might be the best thing that he's ever written. And I don't say that just because it's what he won best screenplay at the Oscars for. I just mean it's probably just one of the best things he's ever written ever.
yeah, I still can't get over the fact that he went from Key and Peele to this.
Right. Yep.
That's
Yep.
quite the jump to make to go from sketch comedy show to critically acclaimed horror movie.
Well, and also it is made very well, aside from his writing and directing, but also just the way it's made overall. I mean, the way it's shot, the way it's edited, the coloring, it's just such a beautifully made film for, especially for a debut. And actually, do you remember what the budget of this film was?
I know it wasn't much, and I, I can't think of a better way to say this, but you can see it on the screen, but that I don't want that to come across as negative
No, no,
because
that's
it's
not.
only shot in two or three locations.
Yeah, only those main locations, but I think that the budget was only like 4.5 million, and I can kind of get why because you spend most of it in these sort of remote locations or just one location. But either way, despite how much it cost, you can still see just how brilliantly made it was with that budget.
Yeah, and this is both a simple horror movie and yet also a complex horror movie, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the best things about the film would have to be the originality. I think this might be one of the most original horror films of all time, at least in recent years, because again, when I first heard about it, I was so enthused by it because once I read what the synopsis was, I thought I've never seen that movie before, actually, and that's what immediately got me interested. And I think that when it comes to the horror aspect, it uses horror a lot differently than most other horror films. It uses more personal horror very well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not jump scares. That's definitely a nice change of pace. And it really builds tension and dread very well.
Yes, it does.
Like the scene when everybody's first having dinner together once they arrive at the house and Allison's brother starts talking and just getting really intense and in your face and just making you feel very uncomfortable. It doesn't really let up until the end of the movie.
Right. And I think, two other characters that I think make you feel very unnerved would have to be the characters of Walter and Georgina as they're possessed by Rose's grandparents because their attitude and behavior just not only makes Chris uncomfortable, but it can also make the audiences uncomfortable as well. You think, okay, yeah, there's definitely something off with these two characters. And also Rose's parents, they're obviously very strange. And the way that they act towards Chris and toward everyone else, it's a great way to keep audiences unnerved. And again, I think this film has maybe a couple of jump scares, but not many, and they're not forced into the plot to keep you audiences afraid. It just keeps being unnerving without that. And, I really credit Jordan Peele with that because he accomplished that very well.
Yeah, and again, it makes you uncomfortable from the very beginning, and it doesn't really let you breathe
Right, exactly.
because you always have that. When you're watching this, you always have the feeling of, oh God, something bad is about to happen. Like it's just that feeling, and that is a hard feeling to capture and not let go.
Yeah, exactly. That's done very well. And I think another great thing would have to be the acting and the characters in this film. I think each actor in this movie gives a great performance. I especially think that Daniel Kaluuya and Allison Williams both give great lead performances. I thought the two of them actually had good chemistry when they were the boyfriend and girlfriend, before we discover that she's been in on it the whole time. Either way, as both enemies and a couple, I thought that they both gave strong lead performances and they also had good chemistry together as well.
Yeah, and again, it's very hard to play, normal people, and I think Daniel Kaluuya does a very good job at that. The fact that he's emerged as one of the finest actors of our age is something quite nice to see.
Absolutely. And I think that in terms of acting, everyone did do great, like I said, but I think another standout would have to be Catherine Keener. She just plays this very unnerving woman who seems like she can control everyone so well. And I think that she's another standout when it comes to the acting.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't really have too much to add. It's just, she's a very creepy character.
Yeah, she is. And I think that every character, especially heavily main character, what's nice is that they each feel like they have a purpose and they each have a reason for being there and they each had their own distinguishing personalities. And that definitely feels a lot more fresh in a horror film because, well, and just in a lot of movies in general, because sometimes you have all these characters in it and they're just there for the sake of being there. But I think each member of Rose's family had a role to play in their whole scheme of what they were doing. And there was also Rod who kind of comes and saves him at the end, even. And then we
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Rod because I love Rod.
go ahead.
This is probably one of the funniest and best supporting characters we've had in a horror movie in a long time.
Yes, agreed.
Because, yes, he is the funny best friend, but he's also smart.
Yes, he is smart. Absolutely.
He sees quite through, or he sees right through Rose's lies and starts researching and starts, uncovering, parts of this don't quite add up. Something's not right here. And then he comes and saves his friend.
Yeah, it's like, wait, is a character actually thinking rationally in a horror film right now?
Yeah. And throw the fact that on top of that, he's also genuinely hilarious.
Yeah,
On
he is.
top of being competent, is why I love him so much as a character.
Yeah, and Rod was cool. And actually, fun fact, if this is true, what I heard, I think I read somewhere that the producers of Get Out originally wanted Jordan Peele to play Rod, aside from being the director. But I guess that he decided not to because if what I read was right, I think he felt that audiences wouldn't take him seriously. But what do you think? Would you have liked to have seen Jordan Peele play Rod, or are you glad that he didn't?
I don't know how that would have fit because I'm pretty sure Jordan Peele, because Daniel Kaluuya and Lil Ray Howery look like they're similar in ages.
Right.
They look like they could be friends, but they don't look so much alike that they look like they're related.
Right.
So they look like they're actual, like could be legit friends. If you replace Lil Ray Howery with Jordan Peele, I don't know how that would look because I think Jordan Peele is significantly older than Daniel Kaluuya. So they probably would have had to change something to make that feel a little bit more natural. Maybe had to be like Jordan Peele's his older cousin that he's living with at the moment, or something akin to that.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. But aside from that, one of the best things about the film, I think, is probably the setting. Because, again, this is another movie and horror film like The Conjuring, where most of the movie takes place at that house, at Rose's parents' house. And what's cool is you stay there for most of the movie and the pace keeps up. It doesn't really drag at any point. It doesn't feel like, oh God, are we ever going to leave this house? Or is the plot going to pick up or anything? But it continues to flow so naturally throughout the film, while even though you spend so much time at this house. And that's really unique about the film.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it is one setting kind of helps to keep the feeling of the constant tension
Yes.
because you're not cutting away to other locations all the time.
Yeah, and it feels like all this tension is just building up in this one little area as well, that it's just ready to burst.
Yeah, it kind of makes it feel a bit claustrophobic on top of that. One comparison I can make is weirdly the final act of Jaws, where Hooper, Brody, and Quint are all on the Orca, and that's the only spot they're going to be in for a good chunk of the movie. And feels very claustrophobic, and you're not cutting away to other locations to kind of break that tension. So
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I think the house for this movie, the main location is just such a I just love how beautiful it was. It was just such a great house, and it was a great house to have all this take place at. And so that was great. So, but yeah, those are all my pros with the movie. Why don't we get into our cons with this film right now? Why don't you go first?
um, I don't have a lot of cons with this movie. It does feel a bit shorter than you would expect it to be. Because
Right.
I think this movie is what, only
Like an hour and
an
40,
hour and 45 basically. For this kind of movie, you would think it would be a bit longer than that.
like a little over 2 hours, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere between two and I'd say like two and a quarter. I think two and a quarter might be pushing it a bit too much, but yeah, it feels really short. And I don't really think it affects the pacing too much. I just think it's a very quick watch. And that's not really a terrible thing. It just feels a bit strange to me.
Okay, I kind of get that. But I think for me, I don't really have a lot of cons with this film either. The only big one that I have is the reveal that Rose is part of the Order of the Coagula. I mean, I'm glad that she is. I kind of figured that was going to happen, but that's why it's a con. I kind of suspected from the very beginning that she might be in on the whole thing, because as we watch the movie, as we go through it, we meet the family, we see them arrive, and they meet everyone else. All I could think was that there is no way that she doesn't know about this. She has to. So to me, that whole thing just felt kind of obvious.
Yeah. And the fact that, yeah, it does feel a little too obvious considering the fact that her parents, her brother, all of her neighbors where she grew up are involved with this. I think it would have actually been a bigger surprise if it had been legit that she wasn't part of it.
Right.
Yeah, that does feel a little too obvious. That's not a huge complaint.
No, it's not a huge complaint. It's just my only like bigger one. I don't have any other big complaints with this movie at all. But other than that, yeah, I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. But for a rating, what would you give it on a scale of 1 to 10?
Uh, this is a good movie. Again, I don't think it's in my top 10 favorite horror movies. I'm thinking like a solid 8.5, like an 8.5.
Okay. I think I would probably give this a I actually think I might give this movie a 9. I think it's that great. And yeah, so I think a 9 is my rating. But yeah, anything else you want to say about the movie?
No, not really. I still can't figure out why the Blue Hell, the Golden Globes nominated this as a comedy.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, it's got jokes in it, but so does it. Like every movie ever made basically has a joke in it at some point. But I don't consider any of those movies or comedies.
Right. Yeah, that is a good point. All right, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we need to say. All right, thanks so much guys for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We got more reviews to come. And yeah, we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.